Welcome back to the Inbound Clients OS podcast. My name is Steve Olson. Today we're going to talk about the elementary features of a sales pipeline that we build for everybody that we consult with, partner with, and install. And believe it or not, across most verticals, most professional service verticals, the sales pipeline tends to be the same. Now, what I want to do, or what our intention is when we build out these pipelines, is to make it as simple as possible and to follow it as paint by numbers as possible. And what I mean by that is, if you've ever been to like a Chick-fil-A and you look at the kitchen, you look at the wall, like there's all these pictures on the wall that says like, put the bun here, then the chicken, then the cheese, then the lettuce, then the tomato, then the pickles, and then the bun. I don't know if that's the order, but you can get the drift. Where it's put together so simple that anybody can get hired at Chick-fil-A, look at the pictures, and literally do exactly what the pictures tell you to do. The way that you run your sales pipeline needs to be pretty much that paint by numbers, or that instructions by picture, said a different way, or said a different, or a better way rather, as possible. Because the easier that you can make the client journey through the sales pipeline, the faster it is to onboard sales talent, and the faster it is to get that sales talent profitable. Number one issue that we solve when we work with companies across a whole bunch of different verticals is that the sales process is way too complicated. And worse yet, it's being handled differently by everybody on the sales team. So the first thing that we do with almost every consulting client we work with is we look at the sales funnel, we look at the sales pipeline, and we try to systemize the entire thing. Meaning, here's what happens on step one, here's what happens on step two, here's what happens on step three, here's what you say, here's what you email, here's what you text. Like, we want this to be as paint by numbers as possible. Here's the other cool thing. When you simplify the sales funnel and the sales pipeline, you don't have to pay as much in commission. And I don't mean that you should be taking your sales team and paying less in commission because you can. What I'm saying is that the more complicated the sales process is, the more you put on the shoulders of your salespeople, the more you put on your shoulders of your salespeople, the more turnover you have, the higher you need to pay for commission. So like a broken down sales pipeline is costing you more money than just literally the conversion at hand. It's costing you money across all parts of the organization that you probably don't even realize are happening right now because we're not focusing on the right metrics. Most people are like, how much do I need to spend to get leads in? How many of those leads do we need to call? And then like, are those leads profitable? Are they top of funnel? Are they bottom of funnel leads? Like, it gets very analytical, when in reality, the gap or the distance between where you are right now and where the company needs to be, it's not necessarily more leads or different leads or a new marketing funnel. It might be. In most cases, it's looking at the sales pipeline and streamlining that entire thing. So I want to illustrate a little bit about how we think about a sales pipeline, and then maybe you can take this and deploy it into your business if it makes sense. If you're not already getting our email, just go to steveolsongroup.com/email, and we send out these strategies twice every single week. And you can take everything we're doing, rip it off, put it in your business. If you want me to do it for you, or you want my team to step in and install this for you as well, you can click the link in the show notes below, and we'll walk you through either consulting, an in-day execution session, or a potential partnership between you and I for 24 months so that we can work together and scale the business to wildly profitable numbers in as little, way less than 24 months. But that's typically the amount of time that we spend. All right. So I want to get into a little screen share. I just want to draw this out to make this like super simple. I'm not going to use like industry specific stuff, but if you're in professional services, like you're in mortgage or real estate or, finance or coaching or anything like that, to where you have a longer term sales pipeline, could be an advertising sales or media sales, something to where it's not cheap and somebody's like, they get on one call and they buy right away. This is more of a drawn out process. Then this is how we think of it. Okay. So I'm just going to write sales pipeline up here, and that should be in black, not blue, but we'll leave it in blue. Put this in black. And then there's really like anywhere from 6 to 9 stages. We don't want to make this crazy. Stage number 1 is new inquiry. Okay. We'll put a little line after this. Everything in new inquiry is kind of like the setup of the lead. Okay. After they're in new inquiry, we're going to go to in follow-up. And again, your nomenclature or naming strategy might be a little bit different, but this works pretty much everywhere. After that, we've got nurture. And then after that, we've got appointment set. I'm just going to say appointment set. And then after this, we've got decision. So once they've gone to the appointment, we need to know what they want to do, right? And then after that, we have onboarding. And then after that, We have, if you're in real estate, this could be like active listing, after buyer. If anywhere else, we call this fulfillment or delivery. Delivery. So delivery is essentially like whatever we promised you, whatever the product we sold, we're delivering on that product. Okay. And then after that, that would be closed. And then maybe if you need another stage, or not maybe, we also have a loss stage. Okay. So close means we've completely fulfilled everything that we want in that client obligation, and everything else is pretty much like what it sounds like. So what should happen at every stage? Well, when a new inquiry comes in, I'm assuming that this is somebody that's actually raised their hand and they're a lead on your website. I want to make sure I'm really clear about something. A lead on your website is not an email subscriber. It's somebody that acknowledged they want something in return for their contact info. So if you go to our website, especially that I just told you earlier, steveolsongroup.com/email, that is an email subscription. Now, you may want to get emails from us on how to grow an inbound business and build out a wildly profitable sales organization. And right now, you're at the stage of like, I just kind of need to find out if this is where we need to go. That's totally okay. Somebody who joins a email subscription to get 2 emails from us a week, that is not a prospect. And I want to make sure I'm really clear about this. This is somebody that maybe found us on YouTube, they found us on the podcast, they found us on Instagram, TikTok, or whatever, and they just want a little bit more. That's it. They just want a little bit more. They're not ready to buy something, but they want more than just like consuming stuff on YouTube. They're in kind of like, I don't want to call it purgatory, but that is not a prospect. So if you run a newsletter, which if you do it right, newsletters are very valuable. If you do it wrong, they're not, they're completely worthless, right? But that's a subscriber. That is not a prospect. A prospect would be somebody who downloaded something specifically in your business to get a piece of their journey solved. Like they have a problem and they want to solve that journey. It could be like the 4 questions you should ask a lender before you get pre-qualified for a mortgage. That would be a lead because that's an indication that they're moving forward in the future, right? 6 questions you should ask a real estate agent before you sell your home in 2026. The 3 different ways to price your home in 2026 to break a record in record time, right? So all these things, if you look at the title, and those could be videos, it could be webinar, it could be a PDF, it could be a GPT. The mechanism of how we deliver that lead magnet, if you want to call that, really doesn't matter. It's the intent based on the title of what they're downloading, which differentiates whether they're a subscriber or a lead. Too many people are trying to follow up with subscribers, treating them like leads, and they've got really low conversion rates. And they think that it's a lead problem. It's not a lead problem. It's literally how they came into the funnel. They didn't come in as a lead. They came in as a subscriber. Those are 2 totally different things. So if we get back to the screen share, let's talk about what should happen. So I'm going to assume that this was a lead. There's intent. They came in. Well, the first thing that we need to do is we need to assign to a user, like who on the team is going to do this. The second thing is we need to create a deal in the pipeline. The third thing we need to do is we need to clean the contact record. I'm just going to say contact record. And that's like setting some fields. That's like so we know that this person is no longer a subscriber with us, even though they're still getting the email. This is literally a prospect in our sales pipeline, right? And then after that comes in, we want to deliver on whatever they were promised. So again, if they're going to say that I want this report, 3 things that I need to do before I talk to a mortgage lender, before I get pre-qualified, that's fine. Whatever you promise them, we need to deliver that in the new inquiry stage, right? We always recommend delivering the goods via email, not on the website. Unless you're using like Active Campaign or HubSpot, and you can track the activities on the website, because we want to know, like, of all the new leads that came in, we want to know how many of them actually took action on what they registered on. And I know what you're thinking, like, well, doesn't everybody take action on what they registered on? And the answer is no. Like 30% to 70% of the people that come in, like, give you their email, they give you their first name, and they literally take no action from there. You never hear from them again. It's not ghosting. It's that there's a million things going on all day, and they just elected not to move forward, right? So 30 to 70%. So of the 70 to 30% of the people that we can work with, we want to deliver on the promise. And we always recommend delivering that via email, because we want to condition the prospects that everything that comes good from us, everything that we deliver that has value, that was a weird way of saying that, is going to come from email. It's not going to come from the website. It's always going to come from email. So I'm conditioning you like good stuff equals email, right? If I register on a squeeze page or landing page, and then whatever I register for, I get on the very next page. That's cool. It's a great experience, but there's literally no reason for them to ever look at their email. Like you're not giving them a reason to go, move over to the modality from being on the web into their email inbox. Okay. So we want to deliver on that promise. And then after that, we're going to move the stage. Now we can do this automatically, right? We want to move them out of inquiry, new inquiry. New inquiry means somebody came in and something's happening, but there's been no human intervention yet. That's what we consider new inquiry. In follow-up, it's exactly what we want to do. It's exactly what it sounds like, rather. So once they get what they're looking for, we're going to check. Number one, did they consume? And then we're going to put over here, number two, did they not consume? Okay. So if they did consume, what we're going to do is we're going to drop them, and we write this for all of our clients, into a 3 email sequence that says, hey, we noticed you looked at this. We want to see if you got it. Everything makes sense. And if you're like most of our clients, you probably have questions. Here's how you get those questions answered. So think of this as like a very light automated follow-up that is just talking to them based on how they came in. Our average client probably has about 10 of these sequences written out. We don't need a ton of them. We just need a playbook on how we know when to deploy what sequence or not. So that's going to send 3 emails. If we collected their phone number, we may send an SMS, and then we may do a phone call if we collected their phone number. Now, if somebody comes in and it's like a guide of like, how to buy a home in 3 easy steps in 2026, if you're just starting the process, I don't know how many people are going to give you their phone number in exchange for a guide or a GPT or a video. You can get a phone number with a webinar, right? Live events. Phone numbers are very common. However, your registration rate for a webinar is probably going to be tenfold the cost of a micro magnet or a lead magnet or anything like that. So keep that in mind. We're more of the thing is I want to build the list as big as I can, because the more people that are on the list, the more opportunities twice a week I have to kind of, resurface those people on the list. So sure, if you're getting a $2 lead on an email or maybe a $10 to $18 lead on a webinar registration, I would argue that maybe the webinar registration could be more valuable because they're going to experience you. More intimately on a video call, kind of like you're on right now. And there is a lot of value to that. However, when they're on your email list, you can also email them with marketing emails, letting them know that this webinar is coming. And it may shock you that the cost of doing, low tier lead magnets and then getting them to a webinar, as opposed to just running traffic directly to the webinar, it may be cheaper just to do the lead magnet route and then have the webinar is email follow-up, right? So take that for what it's worth. Number two, if they did not consume it, what we're going to do is we're going to send one more email that says, hey, you requested this, but we noticed you didn't take a look at it. Okay. Once we send that, then we're going to kick them into that 3 email sequence. And again, depending on how they came in, we may do SMS, phone, and all of that stuff. Okay. Every lead that comes in, every prospect that comes in, every subscriber that comes in, they're going to get an email on Monday. They're going to get an email on Thursday. Okay. Those emails are really simple. They're just delivering on all the learning center content that we are creating on the website. That's all they're doing, right? We're just redelivering that. It's kind of like retargeting through email, if you want to think of it that way. And so we want to keep sending those over and over and over again. And then there's going to be some specific call to actions on that email that said, hey, the content's great, but if you want to take the next step, here's 3 ways we'll make that happen. If they click any of those links, that's going to move them into another sales pipeline that said, hey, there was a sales activity that happened. Probably want to follow up to this person. Again, same thing. We assign the contact, clean the contact up, and then we kick off a 3 email sequence that says, hey, we noticed you took a look at this but didn't continue. I'm sure you have questions. Would you like to hop on a quick call? Right? It's totally okay to tell people, like, I know what you're doing because we have you in our CRM and we track everything on the web. That's very normal. That's not Big Brother. It's not something it's not a new concept. People are very used to it. And I think it's okay just to be super forthright and upcoming that said, hey, we noticed you did this, but you stopped there. You didn't book a call. You didn't fill out the form, or you chose not to buy a ticket, or you didn't register for the webinar. I'm sure you have questions. Would you like to hop on a call to discuss those, right? Most of our conversions come from those emails alone. Hey, we noticed you started something, but you didn't finish. That's like 80% of our conversions that happen in that process. So we're going to kind of resurface them, and we're going to stay in follow-up until they reply. Once they reply, they go over to nurture. Nobody goes into nurture if they haven't replied to us. And I know the question you're asking, like, well, Steve, how long does somebody stay in follow-up? It's different for every company. But the only thing in follow-up that we're trying to do is get a reply. That's it. Hey, you did this? Do you want to call? Hey, you did this? Do you want to call? Hey, you did this? Do you want to call? Right? We're just going to keep doing that. In some sales organizations, like in real estate, it's a longer in follow-up time. If you're selling something that's like $500 and you can sell it to anybody at any given time, like it's not a life cycle type product, then I think this can be much shorter. It can be as little as 90 days, right? And then we move them out, we put them back in subscriber, and we let the email do its magic. When they click a call to action, puts them right back into the sales pipeline. Okay, so I'm going to say 3 to 9 months. I would tolerate somebody being in there. Nurture, a little bit different. I'm going to leave them in nurture for as long as their timeline dictates. So I'm going to put their timeline. So let's say that somebody responds to an email and they're in the real estate space. And they're like, oh yeah, we're thinking about buying a home, but it's not till October. So I'm going to put a task on that deal until, we're not going to wait till October, because by then they will have already bought the home, because you guys have figured out that real estate never happens based on the plan, never happens by design. The home always pops up, something always changes, the economy changes, everything changes, right? So they're going to say, oh yeah, we don't want to move till October. So the 3 months leading up to the date they say they're going to do, I'm going to do 3 tasks. Task 1, task 2, task 3. And this is going to be month 1 before it happens, month 2 before it happens, month 3 before it happens. I'm just going to automatically set these, okay? I'm going to leave them in nurture. In the meantime, they're getting our twice a week emails. And maybe once a month, I'm sending an insight email. And also once a month, I'm sending a light sales, like a story-based email. That's it. That's my entire thing for nurture. So to qualify for nurture, somebody has to respond to communication, and they have to say that there's some level of intent, right? Doesn't it need to be like, I'm an all cash buyer looking to buy a home tomorrow, I'm ready to go. It doesn't have to be, yeah, I'm interested in your consulting and call me in a week. It doesn't have to be that aggressive. It could be, we're in a current relationship right now with a consultant and that ends in December and we're going to relook at other opportunities in January. That's fine. Put them in nurture, because we now have intent. Without intent, they need to leave the sales pipeline. So if somebody responds to an email and they say something like, oh, we're just looking, don't know when we're on to buy, no need to email us, thank you so much, and they just ghost you, that's not a nurture. They go right back into being a subscriber. We move that deal to lost because we lost that deal, right? Because we want to track how many deals come into the pipeline and how many result in, like, there's either bad data, which we just delete. There's 1, meaning they became a client. And then there's 2, they said, or 3, they said that, like, we can't do business right now. So we move that over to lost. We put them back into the subscriber flow. And then when they click one of the call to actions in the email, then we move them right back into the sales pipeline, and we do the exact same process all the time. So indication of intent, right? They go into the sales pipeline. We follow up until they tell us, I want to do something now, in the future, or never. That's it. Those are the only 3 like outputs we can look for. Now, in the future, or never, right? Once they tell us that, if it's now or in the future, we're going to move them over to nurture. If it's never, we're going to move it over to lost. We're going to put it back to subscriber. We're going to start the process all over again. So after we go through nurture, we're going to set all the tasks based on what they told us. And then eventually they're going to say, hey, I want to formalize this process. I want to set an appointment. I want to hear why you guys are different. They want to set an appointment. So we're going to move that client over to appointment set. And once they're in appointment set, it's crazy how many people, did I spell there wrong up here? I think I did. That looks wrong. Is that right? Here, there? I don't know. It's when you write and you talk at the same time, it's kind of awkward. Once they have an appointment set, like, I cannot tell you how many times I go into a sales organization and the first question I ask is like, show me what happens when somebody agrees to an appointment. And they're like, well, what do you mean? Well, when somebody says like, yeah, I want to come into the dealership, or I want to have a call about real estate, or I'm interested in you consulting, or I want to get pre-qualified for whatever the thing is, right? Whenever they say, hey, I'm interested, what's the next step? I tell them, walk me through the process between that moment and the moment you meet. And they're like, well, we just tell them to meet us Thursday at 4 and they show up. Okay, well, and that's it. If they don't show up, we call them or we ask them where they're at and we try to reschedule. Here's the right process we should be looking. There should be a confirmation email that goes out So we're going to put C for confirmation email. There should be 3. And then after that, like this is like, here's what happens next. This is what you can expect during that meeting. This can be a canned marketing-based email. This is not something that we need to write every single time. If you have 6 different ways you meet with clients, we need 6 different emails. If you've got a buyer appointment, if you're a real estate agent, and a listing appointment, we need an email for both. Like this should outline everything that you're going to learn and everything that you're going to walk away with in that process. And then after that, we're going to get them a 3 reminder. I'm going to put reminder times 3 emails. Hey, here's a reminder. Here's how we're meeting. We're going to do that right away, right? Or like really 1 to 2 hours later. And then a day before, like 24 hours before, or the night before at like 5 o'clock, that's email number 2. I'm excited to meet tomorrow. Here's where we're meeting. Here's what we're going to cover. Any questions, let me know. Just respond to this email. And then we're going to do the final reminder email 1 hour before the meeting. These 3 emails alone are going to do 2 things for your business. Number 1, they're going to prevent the cancellations. And number 2, if they are going to cancel, right, they are going to reschedule, it's going to happen earlier. Like you're not going to show up to your meeting and you're like, where are they at, right? Because you gave them 4 opportunities to respond to a piece of communication saying, hey, something came up. We need to move somewhere else, right? So that's really, really good process, okay? Like if there's only one thing that you took away from this podcast episode today, if you're listening to this, or if you're watching this on video, if there's only one thing that you took away from this video, it's that right after this, it's like, go write those 3 reminder emails and make sure that every single appointment gets one of those. Logical question you may be thinking, well, what's an appointment? An appointment is any time that somebody is scheduled to talk to you and has a chance to become a client. Could be a Zoom call, could be a phone call, could be a showing, could be an in-person meeting, could be a coffee meeting, could be a meeting at their office. It could be a conference call with a whole bunch of other people. Anytime there is somebody on the calendar that's scheduled to meet with you, we should have this process. The other thing that I'm going to do in addition to that is I'm going to invite them to the calendar alert. So I'm going to put invite cal alert. Because again, if I was at work and you and I had to do a meeting together based on next month's forecast of revenue, like we wouldn't just say that and have no follow-up. We'd put it on the calendar so both people know to be in the conference room Thursday at 2 o'clock. This is kind of the same thing. Again, I can't believe how many people that we've consulted with at the beginning don't put their appointments on a calendar with the client, right? Because now, like when I see it on my client, I know that I'm responsible with meeting with that salesperson. And again, we're trying, if they are going to ghost or if they do need to cancel, that's okay. Things happen. I just want to know as early as possible because number 1, I want the opportunity to reschedule. And number 2, I don't want to like show up and waste an hour of my day knowing that they were never going to show up in the first place, right? The more notice that they give you that they can't be there at that time, the easier it is for you to reschedule. It is almost impossible for you to reschedule a meeting with somebody who just literally didn't show up. Almost impossible. And maybe you figured out that strategy. We have never figured out that strategy. Okay. So we go on that appointment. All right. After we go on the appointment, I'm going to put appointment set phase 2 down here. We want to send a recap email. Let's say recap. Here's what I learned. And here are next steps. So I'll put a little divider line. Here are next steps. Now, easy hack for you, okay? Easiest thing that you can do. I would either go pay for Fireflies, which is like $15 a month. It's an AI note-taking system. Or you can pay for like a little card. There's Plod is one of them. Pocket is another one. I think those are like $200 you buy it, and then there's a monthly subscription. Every meeting you have, phone call, Zoom, in-person, coffee, whatever. First thing you say, hey, is it okay with you if I take notes with our AI note taker? I'll send you a recap so we know exactly what happens after this call. 100% of the people will say yes, right? 100% of the people will say yes. You need to get that permission because if you send the AI notes later and they're like, oh, I didn't know this was recorded, that's kind of awkward. Like we don't want to be in that position, right? So we want to send a recap email. And in that recap email, we want to say, here are the next steps. Right? If there's things that you owe them, let's say that you walked away with a meeting and you said, before you and I move forward as clients, I'm going to do these 5 things. Cool. Just send an email saying, here are the 5 things I'm going to do for you and when they're due. And then when they're due, what you would do is just respond to that email and say, hey, I told you I was going to have this on Tuesday. It's Tuesday. Here you go. Right? Remember, good process drives good results, right? After we do that, the client's going to go into decision mode. Then we're going to move them. I'm just going to put like a little arrow over here. And then they're going to go into decision mode. Nothing really changes here other than a contact cleanup. so that we can track who we went to, right? And then, maybe there's a couple fields things, and then we're gonna apply a task. And then depending on your sales cycle, how long that takes, that task may be anywhere from 3 to 10 days out. And again, simple email, simple SMS, simple phone. There's people that will tell you, like, oh, well, we only do phone, or we only do email, or we only do SMS. And the answer to all that is yes. I think you can do whatever you want as long as you're conditioning the client that this is where business communication lives. Some of you may say that some clients don't email, they don't text, they don't do phone calls. That's fine. Meet the client where they're at if that's an issue. But if you condition everybody that, hey, this is where all good things happen, then we're good to go. So at the end of appointment, let's say that they meet with you. They're either a client, they're not, or they're a client later. They're a client now, they're a client later, or they say no. That's it. Those are the only three outcomes, right? So a client later or a client now, we're going to put them in a decision. And if they say, like, oh, this is great, awesome, we're going to start the process in 60 days, then we're going to move them over to onboarding. So if they're a yes from decision, so let's say they go through all this and they're like, yeah, we're good to go. We're going to move them over to onboarding with a task and a due date accordingly. How long would I keep somebody in onboarding? As long as you need to until they tell you that they're not a client, right? Would I leave somebody in onboarding for 6 months? If they signed the agreement and they said, yeah, we're good to go. Yeah, they're going into onboarding. We're going to prepare them for everything they need. And then we're going to kind of put the brakes on until they're ready to go. But, not everybody's ready to go within 3 days, right? And we need somewhere for them to go. Okay. If they say no, we're not, like, we've interviewed 7 different people or consultants or real estate agents or whatever, and they say no, we're just going to move them. Let's say they're a no right here. We'll put smiley face or frown face. We're going to move them over to lost. That's fine. Like, some people will tell you, like, oh, hey, so I can better my practice. Will you tell me why we lost? Like, look, man, if you think anybody's going to tell you the truth in that moment, they're going to say whatever they need to say for the least amount of friction as possible to get you off the phone. It's not dishonest. It's just the way it is. So we don't do that. And you can, like, chances are, if you lost a deal, you know why you lost it. Okay. So you can go down that path if you want. It's not part of our process. We don't do it. So onboarding, we're going to do everything that we need to do to get them ready. Could be a series of emails, could be a project management system we need to invite them to, could be something we need to put in direct mail. And then eventually they're going to move to the delivery phase. Okay. Before we get into the delivery phase, or I'm going to put active client over there. Let's say you set an appointment, they ghost you. What happens then? Well, we're going to take that person. Let's say they ghost, or they just don't show, right? People do this. Or it's 10 minutes after the meeting calls and you get that frantic text message or phone call saying, oh my gosh, I forgot. I'm so sorry. Like, something came up. I'll circle back and I'll reschedule. Number one, reschedule the meeting right there on the spot. Reschedule the meeting right there on the spot. We're going to move them back to nurture. We're not going to move them to lost. We're going to move them back to nurture. Unless they tell you, hey, something else changed and we're no longer meeting with you, we're no longer buying a home, we're no longer going to hire you for the process of selling your home, then we move them over to lost. But if all they did was ghost, and maybe we haven't reconfirmed an appointment, or we're in that kind of purgatory land where we're trying to figure out where they are, we're going to move that deal back to nurture, and we're going to continue to follow up until they either tell us, like, hey, we're not moving forward with you, we're not meeting, like, we tried to be nice, we no longer want to do it, or, yeah, sorry about the inconvenience, let's meet next Wednesday at 2. And then from that point, we're going to move them back to appointment set, right? So this pipeline is fluid both forward and backwards, but we want to make sure it's accurate, right? So then once we get to delivery, right, we want a series of, also as well, like, here's what needs to happen. Once they're ready to become a client, we need one email that outlines the expectations of what happens next, or being a client. Client. And again, this is kind of like a CYA email, just make sure everybody knows. And then whatever you have to deliver on. If they're a buying client, like, schedule showings. If they're a listing client, like, start the pre-marketing. If they're a consulting client, like, what is the onboarding call and the expectations and the future pacing of the 90 days? Like, that process needs to start. And then they remain in this deliverable or active client stage until you're fulfilled on whatever you had to deliver. So let's say they bought a home, or they sold their home. They sold their home with you, or maybe it was a consulting client and it was a 6-month consulting contract, and the contract ended. You fulfilled on your needs, they fulfilled on their needs. Then we move them over to closed. If for any reason they cancel early, let's say you take a listing and it's a 6-month listing agreement, and 3 months they're just like not happy and they cancel, we're going to move that over to lost. Okay. Now, could you get super analytical and create a canceled thing? You could do that. That's fine. Right. I've seen sales pipelines when we log into people's HubSpot or Salesforce or ActiveCampaign or Keep or Pipedrive, whatever they're using. The majority of our clients that we work with are on HubSpot. In fact, if you're watching this right now and you're looking for a new CRM, even if it's like at the $20 per user range, I would look at HubSpot. At the $100 per user range, I would look at HubSpot. At $150 per user range, I would look at HubSpot. I think it's from a sales perspective, it's the best value that's out there. Most sales pipelines are significantly overbuilt. They're significantly over, like there's all these stages for like this one client that came in this one time, this one way, that had this one situation. Hey, we need a stage for that. And then all of a sudden we look at this pipeline and there's like 17 stages to it. And every sales rep's got their own interpretation of who goes where. We want to simplify that and make it easy, because the more simplified it is, it's easier to run reporting on it. The clearer the reporting is, the easier it is for us to scale the company. Okay, that's like the recipe for success. Now, in HubSpot, especially if you're on enterprise, we power this entire thing pretty much through what we call a sales playbook. Whereas the sales reps comes in, there's one playbook. They know exactly from steps 1 through 10 or A to Z on what to say, what emails to send, how to move them through the process. Like it's basically one predefined playbook that we build for everybody, for every type of client they have. And based on how they fill out that playbook, the sales pipeline gets manipulated accordingly. So they can do things manually in the pipeline, or they can do things manually in the playbook, but both of them are going to automatically update each other, so that all I have to do is work my deals every single day and focus on the number of follow-ups that I want to do. So if we recap really quick, new inquiry is everybody that's coming in that's getting fulfilled on what they were promised. In follow-up is just our ability to say, hey, we gave you this thing. Do you have any questions? Do you want to become a client? Nurture is that people only go into nurture when they've acknowledged or replied to the in follow-up communication. And they said, I have potential to do business now, later, or sometime in the distant future. But they did give us some level of indication that if we do our job, we could earn them as a client. Appointment set is exactly what it sounds like they've set an appointment. Outside of that appointment, they're either a now client, they're a later client, or they're not a client, right? Depending on how that is. If they ghost you or they cancel, we move them back to nurture. If they're a later client or a now client, or anything, we move them over to decision. And then once they've acknowledged, like, yeah, we're good to go, we're signing all the agreements, we move them into onboarding. That sets the expectation for everything. Once the expectations were set, we move them into client. And they may only be on onboarding for 2 days. That's fine. If onboarding is just like 2 emails and access to ClickUp or Basecamp or whatever you use in project management, they could be there for 20 minutes, but they've got to go through that phase so that they can look, back and say, whoa, like everything that we did, like this works really well in advertising sales. It works really well in real estate, it works really well in consulting, works really well in, mortgage or finance or personal training, anything like that, any level of service-based business. This is really the only pipeline that you need to run. There are times when we will build other pipelines for companies, and it will just be a lead flow pipeline, a client onboarding pipeline, and a client fulfillment pipeline. Like there's lead flow, like client follow-up. I'm sorry, lead flow, onboarding and expectations, and then active client. Like that's totally okay to do that. If at all possible, we'd like to keep it as one. There's custom objects in a lot of these CRMs. There are times when you would use custom objects to kind of fulfill on this data. Most of the time, you don't need them. Sometimes you do. It's a case-by-case basis. But if we can get everything on one pipeline for you and operationalize, and even more importantly, the entire team knows exactly how to move somebody from inquiry or new inquiry all the way to closed or lost, and it's done the same way across the sales team, 2 things are going to happen. Number 1, you're going to get to revenue quicker. Number 2, we're going to be able to report on all of that revenue so that you can predictively grow the company with some analytics and some trends, based on the conversion numbers and all that stuff. If your pipeline is dirty, or worse yet, you've got multiple sales reps that are doing it multiple different ways, the reporting we can still do, but chances are the reporting is wildly inaccurate, which is like no fun for anybody. So that's the sales pipeline. I hope that was valuable. Any questions, let us know. Email me or the team at team@steveolsongroup.com. We'd love to help. Or you can go get our email. Just go to steveolsongroup.com/email, and we'll send you these strategies multiple times a week. All right. Love you all. I'll see you on the next episode. Peace out.